chimney breast, final chimney breast, final chimney breast.
Is it time for Vinyl Chimney Breast?
Yes, it's week 16. Big face! This week we're looking at albums with covers which feature big faces. Or maybe they're looking at us. So this is Adam and the Ants, Kings of the Wild Frontier album from 1980. Obviously Mr. Ant had a very unique look which is used to full effect on this cover. I like the kind of slightly grainy TV image style that they've gone for on that, which is reflected on some of the images from the inside sleeve as well and on the back. And this is really kind of stylistically unique music, perhaps best described as cowboy pirate rock, with some Native American rhythms thrown in, two drummers, lots of melody lines played on the bass, and really kind of lyrics that make a statement and are really confidently delivered. This still sounds great, and it's interesting, this was recorded at Rockfield Studios in Monmouthshire, the legendary recording facility. Interesting to compare it with albums that were recorded there around about the same time. Rush's Hemispheres was recorded there 2 years earlier in 78. Hemispheres probably sounds much more modern and futuristic than this does. This has sort of got some punky elements to the sound, quite a dry sound to it. Great stuff. And look at this exquisite piece of art here. This is the debut album from Anthrax. Apparently it was supposed to look like this fist had sort of swung across and punched this guy in the face, but ended up looking almost like it's coming out of his mouth. And there's no title required on the front of this, of course. This is called As I Wandered Through the Daffodils. No, Fistful of Metal. Stormwatch by Jethro Tull from 1979. This was an album that dealt with all kinds of environmental concerns, quite forward looking for the time. And so we have Ian Anderson, a rendering of Ian Anderson there on the cover. The cover paintings by David Jackson, looking out at an oil rig, presumably somewhere in the North Sea. The first track on this being called North Sea Oil. And there's a track on this which features an appearance from the ITV weatherman Francis Wilson, who I think I remember. Debut album from Lenny Kravitz from 1989, Let Love Rule. That is definitely a big face. And Kravitz performed just about everything on this: drums, bass, guitar, all the vocals, organ, you name it. Extremely talented guy. And this had a really rootsy kind of 70s sound to it. Hippie-ish kind of stuff. I showed one of the 12-inch singles from this in another video. I think his sound changed a little bit and his approach to things changed a little bit after this, but I really liked this at the time, and not many people seem to know about this in the late 80s, early 90s. Father Abraham and the Smurfs, Father Abraham in Smurfland from 1978. Not everybody knows that the cover which Father Abraham himself intended for this would have looked more like this, and he just wanted an image of his face as large as possible on the cover. He was absolutely livid when he found out that they had included the Smurf Orchestra in front of him on here, and he let his feelings be known on his next solo release, which included the songs Deadly Pandemic in Smurfland and Blue Stew. Larry McRae's Ambition album from 1990. I first became aware of him when he toured opening up for Gary Moore on the Still Got the Blues tour in 1990. I think he won over quite a few fans. It was a great opening act. The title track of this is a really catchy song, and that made an impression. And this has got some soul and pop influence as well as blues. There are lots of horns and backing vocals on this. It's a good album. And speaking of Gary Moore, this is his 1989 album After the War, which was really the last of a long series of rock albums that he'd released before he moved to doing things in more of a blues style for several years. So I'm really glad I saw him on this tour. I think that the previous two studio efforts from him were more consistent than this. This is still pretty good stuff, but you could almost hear that he was growing a bit tired of the sort of rock/metal Guitar Hero type thing on this one. And I had to get my post-it notes out again for the back cover. David Lee Roth's debut full solo album from 1986, Eaton Smile. There's Dave in his kind of tribal, maybe even slightly cannibalistic get-up, as suggested by the album title. And Roth put together just the most exciting, talented band that he could for an incredible album and tour. I mean, this starts off with a song which personifies the Statue of Liberty and ends with a Frank Sinatra cover, so what could be better than that? This is the classic Tears for Fears album, Songs from the Big Chair from 1985. Two big faces for the price of one on this one. And this is a really great album with some just classic pop on it, with a slightly dark edge to it sometimes, even a little bit progressive sometimes. There's an instrumental track on this, soulful, you name it, just a really well put together piece of work. And having this album was one of the first times I can remember the experience of feeling like I knew a song really well before the rest of the world got to know it, because I'd had the album a while before the second single, which was Everybody Wants to Rule the World, came out and was a massive hit. So I think that perhaps appealed to the music snob in me, to think that I knew the song before everybody else got to know it. I know, but I don't have it on vinyl. Thanks for watching Vinyl Chimney Breast. All the music you can hear in the background is by See Through Head. You can find out more in the links under the description. Please click on everything, and I'll see you next week.